Is there any specific list of the clients which we actually sort of discussed previously, if you remember? So there are like 6 qualifying activities, correct?
Exactly.
Which has already been defined,
Six.
with the
I
exception.
think. I think seven. Briefly seven, I believe.
Okay, let's talk about these activities one by one. It's more important because in our previous session, one of my session actually, somebody actually was kind of stressing that the exporters are completely exempt, and I was like trying to explain him that no, it's not going to be like that. This criteria does not apply to the exporters. This criteria applies to the, of course, the income you are calculating or the type of activity you have. So it's important to understand that. So the first thing what I can actually see is basically there is manufacturing and processing of goods on materials, correct? Let's go back and talk about the manufacturing of goods and processing.
So we was talking about the qualifying activities.
Correct.
So the qualifying activities, there are 7 different qualifying activities are mentioned there.
Absolutely.
So the first one is manufacturing and the processing of goods and material.
Exactly.
So on the broader term, what is that? All the
So
companies included?
exactly, any company who is actually manufacturing the goods or they are processing the goods, that means they are just taking up a raw material and finishing the product and then actually selling that, or they are maybe doing that for a third party. That means you're just getting the income for processing the goods. So that actually becomes a qualifying activity.
That qualifying under the qualifying zone, definitely.
Correct.
So let's say there is a company A which is under a qualifying free
Absolutely.
zone, a qualifying
Absolutely.
free zone person, and they are manufacturing something
Correct.
and they are selling. There is a company B to whom they are selling, but this company B is a mainland company.
If they are selling to a company B or
B.
C or anywhere, still the activity actually is subject to 0%
Okay.
for calculating the
for
corporate tax
calculating.
liability. If they have another liability, oh sorry, another activity which is not the qualifying activity,
Qualifying.
so they have
So
to
they have
calculate
to
there.
have.
So basically, they have to allocate the expenditures as well. So for example, if your qualifying activity has a certain number of expenses, so those has to be allocated to that particular activity, and then you have to allocate your other expenses to those non-qualifying activities so that you can actually calculate the corporate tax liability. Now this is really important to understand that how you are going to do that, because if you are going to split your revenues and expenses in this way, there you have like multiple qualifying activities and then you have non-qualifying activities. So it is very important to understand that you have to have a very strong criteria in house so that you do not actually fall into a trap where you actually not calculating or following the tax rules, of course. So, for example, you're using the same furniture for both activities, correct? You might be using the same resources for the both activities,
Building
same building,
rental is the
same
same.
exactly same assets
Utilities.
under the same company, right?
Okay.
So, how you are going to allocate the depreciation, how you are going to allocate the expenditures, right? So, it is important that you have to have a very strong structure of accounting for calculating the liability based on the qualifying activity and non-qualifying activity if you are getting the exemption. There are multiple, of course. If we go to different free zones, there are thousands of companies where their activity is to holding
Holding
the shares.
activity.
We call that holding company, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And the sole purpose of that company is to hold the shares. They don't have any other commercial activity, right? So in that case, it becomes a qualifying activity if that company is existing in a qualifying free zone, of course.
Okay, perfectly fine. So the next is ownership and operation of ships.
Yeah. So if you own ships, and you know that in UAE there are a lot of companies, they are directly associated with the shipping businesses, shipping operations, and the major reason is that UAE is one of the biggest transshipment hubs, especially
Yeah,
Dubai.
exactly,
Jabal Ali
exactly,
Free Zone, right?
exactly,
That is one
exactly.
of the biggest transshipment hubs. So that actually gives them the, like there are multiple companies where they are associated, they own the ships and they are associated with the operations of shipping. So those companies are performing this activity where they own it and they might be actually giving it on the rental basis, or they might be actually having or just own the ships and then they have their other operations related to ships.
So quickly one, so regulated insurances,
Yeah,
funds management,
correct. Yeah.
and asset management. So this
Let's
category.
just apply this to ADGM, to DAFC based companies, or maybe some companies in mainland, and they are basically the reinsurance companies, or they are just the brokers maybe, or they are the fund managers or wealth managers, like you know that DAFC, for example, CAD 3A, 3B, 3C type of companies. So they are associated with fund management or wealth management for by creating the pool of investments. So those companies are performing the qualifying activities, of course. Yeah.
Headquarters and the
So basically,
the financial
if you
services.
relate this activity with the ESR activity, it's the same thing,
Exactly,
right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
basically, headquartering a company which is, even though they have a different type of relationship with the outside companies, outside UAE companies, this company within the UAE performs the headquarter business activity. That means they are just operating as a headquarter, and they are managing all the activities within the UAE and outside the UAE for the whole group. That actually becomes a qualifying activity, right? And then the financing services to the related parties. If the sole purpose of that company to exist and finance other group companies, then it becomes the qualifying activity as well.
So there is a last one point uh, under the qualifying activities: the distribution of goods in or from a designated zone subject to the certain condition. What
Exactly.
exactly that meant?
So basically, when you have the distribution of goods center, when I
Okay,
see the
this
say
is
the
again
distribution goods
matching
center,
with
that your
the
company.
ESR thing.
Exactly.
Distribution of goods. Okay.
Exactly. So distribution of goods is something where your company exists only to distribute the goods of other group companies. They are maybe importing the goods from outside, and they are there to just to distribute it. Then it becomes a distribution of goods activity, and it can be one of the qualifying activities.
So it is
It
located
has to
inside
be
the
located within the qualifying free zone, of
qualifying free
course.
zone, and it can be a qualifying
Absolutely.
activity.
Absolutely.
It can be. Okay.
So, Omar, I think it was a very informative session, and now we have to focus on one thing, that we have to have. Maybe we might not have a lot of followers, but we have very good following, of course, and the reason is that we're trying to do whatever is possible from our side. We are doing our research. We're trying to educate the local community, local business community, especially. There are few activities we are going to perform next month. I think it's better to highlight those as well, right? So we're going to have a webinar with the complete details about the corporate tax as well in the next month, and then we're going to have a physical session on 20th of September, where we are inviting like more than 100 people to participate in that. It's going to be a whole day
Session.
training
Yeah, yeah,
session,
yeah.
and free of charge, of course. And maybe we'll be able to provide some coffee and snacks as well.
Sure.
But that is also there. And we are also planning to launch a corporate tax diploma.
Diploma. Yeah.
Not a diploma, as a training program, we
Training
should say
program. Yeah.
specifically. It's not a diploma, actually. So all these things, of course, we have to inform to our colleagues and followers, whoever is there, so that they can be benefited from this thing, right? Our whole idea is to actually help the local accountants. This whole idea is to help the local business owners, those who do not have the knowledge and they do not have the time to just to like go through these books. We are not doing something very special. We are also reading it, and we are also trying to understand why, because for us might be a very easy way of doing it, because we are coming from a background where we have like tens of taxes and all that, and we have seen it during our experience. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sakib. Thank you so very much. And it's a good and productive one. Hopefully, we see
Absolutely.
soon
Absolutely.
again.
For the next session, of course, everyone has to be,
Yeah.
like they should be excited about our next session.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you.